The Heart Spoke, A Tale of Ancient Egypt, by Alex Wynne Ashwood. The sun was barely a thought on the horizon when the boatman pushed against the current. The Nile was still soft and silver, and the papyrus fronds leaned over the water like they, too, were waking slowly. He knew this stretch of the river well, a place where reeds grew thick and birds lifted off at dawn in silent waves. But that morning, something was different. A figure stood by the landing, wrapped in simple linen, hair catching the first gold of the sun. She was gathering reeds, but when she saw him, she stilled. He did not know her name. He didn't need to. She lifted her chin, smiled softly, and the light seemed to bloom around her like a secret. He felt the oar slip in his hand. She said nothing, neither did he. The current took the boat northward, but her image stayed behind. Bright, warm, impossible to forget. The wind shifted as he came back upstream days later, pushing against his sail with a soft, familiar hand. The Nile was wider here, calmer. His boat moved slowly, almost lazily, as though the river itself had decided not to hurry. He didn't look toward the landing at first, afraid that the image he carried in his mind had been nothing more than a trick of sunlight. But then he did, and there she was. She was kneeling at the edge of the water, gathering reeds again, her hair falling forward in a black curtain. This time, when she lifted her head, she didn't just smile. Her eyes lit up, as if she'd been waiting for him to return. He slowed the boat without meaning to, the oar trailing in the current. She tilted her head slightly, playful and silent. Between them stretched nothing but the wide, quiet river, and something even quieter, older, settling between two beating hearts. The river was the same, the wind was the same, but the landing was empty. His eyes went first to the reeds, as if they might conjure her shape. Nothing, just the soft lap of water against the stones, the broken line of a basket half sunk in the shallows, and the wide, quiet sky that gave no answers. He moored the boat and stepped onto the bank, feeling the earth colder under his bare feet than it had ever been before. The reeds were bent, as if someone had moved through in haste. A faint trail in the mud led inland, then disappeared into the thicket. He called out, once, just her name, though he'd never truly learned it. The sound was swallowed by the marsh. Then came the whisper from a passing fisherman. Bandits prowl upriver. Smart folk stay home at night. His chest tightened. The Nile no longer felt like a promise. It felt like a warning. The village was too quiet when he came through. A few doors half open, smoke rising from low fires, and faces that looked away too quickly. He moved from house to house, asking in a voice he barely recognized. Some shook their heads, others whispered. But no one met his eyes for long. Fear lived here now, like a guest who'd overstayed its welcome. At the edge of the marketplace, an old fisherman sat mending his net. His hands worked slowly, steadily, as if nothing in the world could surprise him anymore. The boatman knelt beside him, words tumbling out, her smile, the landing, the empty shore. The old man did not look up. The river gives, and the river takes, he murmured. A single fish flopped in the basket at his feet. The sound felt like the closing of a door. But the boatman did not stop. He turned toward the marshes, heart pounding, knowing the Nile could take many things, but not her, not without a fight. By nightfall, the village had folded itself into silence. Only the wind moved through the papyrus, bending their long stalks like whispering witnesses. The boatman carried a single torch and walked northward along the river path, where the light of the moon trembled on the water. The reeds grew denser, taller, a living wall on both sides. Each step felt louder than it should, as if the darkness itself were listening. At the edge of a flooded grove, something caught against the torchlight. A scrap of cream linen, torn and hanging from a branch. He froze. It was hers. He'd memorized the weave, the way it brushed her skin in the wind. A frog croaked somewhere close, and the current sighed against the shore. The river smelled different here. Damp earth, rot, and fear. He turned toward the marsh, heart hammering, certain he was being watched. The wind rose gently as he reached the bend of the river. There, where the Nile widened, the stars reflected like scattered gold, and the water moved in long, slow breaths. He set the torch down in the sand and fell to his knees, hands pressed together, whispering to the night. He did not know the proper words to speak to a goddess, but the river had always carried whispers, and tonight it would carry his. The silence was deep, heavy, alive. Then the breeze shifted, warm, fragrant, almost like a caress. The reeds trembled, though no one was near. A single night-bird called, soft and low. His pulse slowed, as if something vast and unseen had bent close to listen. He lifted his face toward the stars. If love had a language, this was it. A plea sent on the current, a prayer without form, waiting for an answer. The wind shifted. At first it was just a soft ripple on the water, but then the reeds on both sides began to bend, not as if blown, but as if bowing. The air grew warmer, carrying the scent of lotus and honey, and the torch flame rose straight up, suddenly steady. He held his breath. The river's surface shimmered gold for a heartbeat, as though the sun itself had risen in the middle of the night. Out of that glow, a figure emerged. Hathor, radiant and serene, her human form wrapped in flowing linen, the sun disk and horns crowning her head. She did not walk on the river. The river lifted her, as if eager to bear her weight. Her hair glinted with starlight, her bracelets caught the moon. She did not speak, she only turned her gaze north, and as she did, the reeds bent in the same direction, opening like a path made of wind and water. The boatman rose to his feet without thinking. His heart beat so hard it hurt, but the fear he'd felt earlier was gone. There was no question in his mind. She was showing him the way. He bowed his head, a whisper catching in his throat, then ran into the night along the river's edge, following the trail the goddess had left in the swaying reeds. The Nile itself seemed to guide his steps. The path through the reeds narrowed to a dark, breathing corridor. The boatman ran until his lungs burned, guided only by the golden shimmer that still clung to the water behind him. The marsh whispered with night sounds, frogs, water insects, the distant rush of the current. But above it all was a hush, like the silence a prayer leaves behind. He found her in a shallow clearing beneath a leaning palm. She was crouched low in the shadows, wrapped in her own arms, her face pale in the starlight. When she saw him, she startled, and then, like a knot breaking, she laughed and cried at once. He knelt in the wet grass. Their hands found each other without words. Her hair was tangled with reeds, her dress torn at the hem. But her smile was exactly the same as on the riverbank. She had hidden herself, not been taken. Fear had driven her here, but it was Hathor's light that led him to her. They held each other, listening to the river. Somewhere, far away, the night bird sang again, as if marking the moment two lives rejoined. The bandits were nothing more than a shadow now, behind them, fading with the wind. The night was silent but alive as they pushed off from the shore together. The oar dipped into the black water with a slow, rhythmic sound, and the boat glided north beneath a ceiling of stars. She sat near the bow, her hair loose now, falling down her back like a dark current. He watched her in the torchlight, every stroke bringing her closer, not in distance, but in everything that mattered. The marshes fell away behind them. The moon climbed higher, and the scent of papyrus faded into open river air. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Hathor's presence lingered like a warmth in their chests. The night was no longer frightening. only vast and tender. The boat and the water moved as one, carrying their silence forward. They stopped rowing when the river bent east. A tamarisk tree leaned over the water, its branches tracing silver patterns against the stars. He pulled the boat to shore, and they climbed up the small rise, breathless, but laughing quietly, not because anything was funny, but because they were alive, together, and the world felt wide again. They sat beneath the tree, her head resting lightly on his shoulder, their hands folded between them. The night breeze carried the smell of lotus and distant water. Crickets sang unseen. The torch had burned low, but the stars seemed brighter now, as if the world didn't need fire to keep them warm. Above them, unseen by their mortal eyes, Hathor hovered in the night air, luminous and still, her sun disk catching the moonlight. She watched them for a heartbeat of eternity, then turned away, her glow dissolving into the stars. Love had been heard and answered, and the heart spoke. A Tale of Ancient Egypt,